Welcome back. Now that we're at the Jehovah's Witness headquarters, we're going to take a look at how green is the Jehovah's Witness convention season. And we're going to take a look at the carbon cost of preaching. This is something Jehovah's Witnesses don't talk about. In fact, we're going to just switch screens here and I'm going to show you what they're talking about right now. It's right here. This is on their website today. And the pictures from Getty Pictures. It's not real, it's just a picture. It's not a real polar bear. It's an image of all this garbage floating in the ocean, in which I agree there's a lot of garbage floating in the ocean. So that's what they have. That's their title. Like when you go right to their main site, this is what it looks like. Can the environment be saved? Learn more. And then we get into this one, and it always comes down to, you see, there's not much there, folks. Not much there, not much there. It's all about, will the governments be able to come together to do this? I thought God's kingdom was, this is, they're asking these questions, are they capable? But they're saying no, the Bible speaks of God's government that can and will solve all of earth's problems. It says that the God of heavens will set up a kingdom that will administer all of earth's affairs, Daniel 2:44. And that world government, people will not cause any harm or ruin to one another on the earth. So they're using some of these Old Testament scriptures, and then they invite you to go further, who is the king of God's kingdom. So all they said here was, it's God's problem. This is not man's problem, this is God's problem. That's what I'm hearing here. It says, like, they go all the way through this, they identify the problem. They ask the question, is the government's going to handle this? And then they say, well, no, God's government, it can and will solve it, these environmental problems. So that's been the thing with Jehovah's Witnesses forever and ever. I noticed they didn't quote this scripture, Revelation 11. This is right from their Bible. Revelation chapter 11, verse 18. A lot of times they did. To bring to ruin those ruining the earth. They didn't quote that this time. But that's what the Bible says, to bring to ruin those ruining the earth. That's what the Jehovah's Witness Bible says. This is what other Bible says. This is what the ESV Bible. It says, for the nations raged, but your wrath came, yours being God's, I guess, and the time for the dead to be judged, so we know it's not now, it's in the future, and for rewarding your servants, the prophets, so there's going to be a big reward. And those who fear your name, so those who fear God's name will be rewarded, both small and great. And for destroying, so this is what God's going to do, destroying the destroyers of the earth, and bring to ruin those ruining the earth, God the Almighty. So that's one of the scriptures that Jehovah's Witnesses used to quote a bit. Is that's what's happening? Well, when we look at the assembly, and I'm just going to put that up here. This is a little caption on their advertising, and we'll get into the convention here. And they go to show all the people at the convention here, Jesus a little bit, right here. And this is what they're advertising. They like to pull all the people in.
Of Jehovah's Witnesses continues the new video series, The Good News According to Jesus. Jesus alone is qualified to teach us how to worship God. The benefits are personal, immediate, and everlasting.
So all over the world, they're pulling in people for this convention, and they want people to drive there, to come there. And it's going to cost most people a lot of money to drive to the convention, so we did a little bit of research, ran some numbers, and we got something to give you. And now I've talked about this on other parts. In fact, I wrote a whole chapter in my book, To Heaven and Back, about this, the carbon footprint of Jehovah's Witnesses. So let's cover it again. Every year, Jehovah's Witnesses hold tens of thousands of assemblies and conventions around the world, drawing millions of people to stadiums, arenas, and hotels. And they do it all in the name of God. But here's the question: what's the real cost to the planet? Let's talk about the massive carbon footprint of Jehovah's Witness conventions and the preaching work, and that's what leads up to them. So first of all, the global preaching work, and let me just pull this number on the screen here. I'll shut that off. The global preaching work, JW.org, claims over 8.7 million publishers globally. They're all expected to preach regularly, sometimes several times a week. You know, if you're a pioneer, you're going out more. But if we average that out, each one drives about 2 times a week, 10 kilometers round trip. So here's what the numbers look like. 8.7 million people, 2 trips a week, equals 17.4 million trips a week. So let's say it's 10 kilometers a trip. That's 17.4 miles times 17.4 equals 174 million kilometers a week. Yeah, we're timesing it by the 17.4 million trips. That's what we're doing here. So what is it? The fuel usage? Well, this got a way better mileage than I used to get. But anyways, 8 liters per 100. That's pretty good mileage. Miles per gallon, that'd probably be like up there around in the 30s for sure. 30s miles per gallon. So you'd have to have an economical car to get that. So that's what we base this on. Fuel usage would work out to about 13.9 million liters per week. The carbon monoxide emissions, 13.9 million times 2.3 kilograms equals 32 million kilograms of CO2 per week. So that's 1.6 billion kilograms per year just from preaching alone, not counting meetings, assemblies, or conventions. So if we look at that on a graph chart here, you can see the weekly preaching and traveling is most of it. That's where most of the CO2 output's coming from Jehovah's Witness. And then the second one down there is travel, convention travel, 25%. Printed literature, paper, 4.2%. Kingdom Hall utilities, 7%. Hotel stays and food transport, 2.8%. Idling vehicles. Let's not forget about the idling vehicles. So that's what happens. That's what it looks like once you start looking at the math. And it's interesting how this all works. So when we move down here a little bit, convention season travel, JW convention season is intense. There's 3 major events each year, 2 circuit assemblies, 2 days each, 1 regional convention, 3 days. You book a hotel, you fill the fridge with a couple $100 worth of food for the kids, right? You got a family, and you're trying to do this as cheap as you can, but you got to make bagged lunches, because the Watchtower doesn't allow these convention sites to serve you food. You can't go to the concessions. Not here in Canada, we couldn't. Not last time I was there. So anyways, you fill your fridge with a couple $100 worth of food, lunch meat, to go to the grocery, snacks. You get the kids, juice boxes. You pack up a cooler. You wake up at 6 a.m. The wife gets up, feeds the kids. You hop into the car. You race over to the convention site. So you're there for 8 o'clock or whenever those doors open. You're lining up. You actually get there at 7:30 and you're lining up on the sidewalk to get the best seat. Every assembly I've been to, that's what I was coerced into doing, along with all the other dads. That's what they do. At the end, I just didn't give a crap and I just went late. So anyways, that's how it is. If you go late, you got to sit up in the blue section. the nosebleed section. But if you get there early, you can grab good seats and watch the dramas, see the screen. We used to watch dramas, right? But nowadays it's just screens. They're watching screens, I think. So husband goes down, gets the seats, races back to the hotel, grabs the family. They're all cell phones them. Get waiting on the street. We can't be late. Or you can kind of be late now. You got your seats saved. You got all your bags, your books, your coats, your whatever saved on all the seats for your family. You're not supposed to save for anybody else but those in your immediate car group. There's some real instructions on this, folks. Costs money. Every time you start that car and race across town, it costs money. We forget about all the carbon. Waiting, idling in traffic for an assembly on a Friday, rush hour. Yeah, we all know what it's about. So in Canada, cars idle in parking lots for heat or for air conditioning. In the winter, we have cold winters. You got the kids in the car's always running, keep the heater going. Summertime rolls around, seasonal. When it's not too hot, not too cold, you can shut your car off and get the whole family out and go work a territory. But lots of times it's too hot, car's always idling, someone's in it and keeping cool, and someone else is out. And usually you have other people with you, so you're doing their return visits and they travel with you just to get more time on your return visits. It's all just a big waste of time. But I'm talking here today about the fuel. Every time that vehicle's idling, there's fuel, there's carbon going into the atmosphere. And what happens? It's all going on our credit cards, gas, hotel, foods when we go to those assemblies. I've never once had $800 saved up for an assembly. Never. Went to my credit card and I'd slowly pay it off. Over the year, it was our holiday, I guess. Okay, let's roll this out. Let's estimate one round trip per event. 150 clicks. That's event, assembly event. So there's 3 events, 3 assemblies a year. You have the circuit assemblies, 2 of them, and then the big district assembly. So let's say you got to drive 150 clicks to get there. It's probably low for most people, but I know I was doing 500 clicks when I lived away out at Coal Lake. So now, 450 clicks per publisher per year. That's 8.7 million people, 450 kilometers, 3.9 billion kilometers. So the fuel would be at, that fuel economy car, 8.8 liters per 100. That'd be 312 million liters. The CO from that, because there's 2.3 kilograms in a liter. You guys use gasoline if you're gallons, if you're in the US, so it's a little different. But you can get all this stuff online. That'd work out to 718 million kilograms of CO2 just from Jehovah's Witnesses traveling to conventions. Just that one act alone, traveling to these conventions. So I want to talk about my Arctic story. It just doesn't end there, folks. For 7 years, I flew to the Canadian Arctic every summer to preach. Jet fuel. How much is a jet fuel worth? Jehovah's Witnesses all over the world are flying everywhere. I flew my bookkeeper every year to Bolivia or Bolivia, I believed. And they went down there, but every year jet fuel, right? So I used planes like Canadian North, and they'd haul cargo to groceries up to these places. And a lot of times, I'd book in advance, get all my magazines, and I'd have a lot of weight with books and Bibles. And displacing groceries, really, going up to these communities with JW literature. I had to pay extra for that, of course, jet fuel. It's all by the pound. And I also drove for hours on rural farms. Other people didn't want to do the rural territories, I worked with the territory elder. I was his assistant all the time. And I'd go over it. No one wanted to work the country territories, circuit overseers coming, so I'd get jittery and I'd sign them out and start working them when I was pioneering. But my gas bill, it was at least $400 a month when I was working those country territories. At least, if not more. So gas is expensive up here. Meanwhile, my family struggled mentally, financially, emotionally, and I didn't know any better. I thought I was doing the right thing, serving Jehovah. I used to even think, well, they could have I invite them, they could come with me, but no one wants to go to rural territories all day, especially teenage kids. It's the last thing on their mind. And my ex-wife was depressed all the time, so she didn't want to go. I didn't know better. What do you do? It's really hard to deal with someone that's depressed. You can say, I love you and do all those different things, but they just have to kind of work through it. It's not that it's life-threatening, that you're sitting by their bedside 24/7 to do what? I don't know, read the Bible to them? Watch JW videos or something? It doesn't work that way. With depressed people, they just take a pill and they go to sleep. But anyways, my family struggled, and I went out in service. So I burned a lot of gas. Could have used it for all kinds of things to help the family, but I didn't. And I know a lot of you guys out there did the same thing. So here's the global difference. We want to talk about this. Not all witnesses drive. Some use subways or bicycles. Some walk, especially in Africa. A few own electric vehicles, right? But JW.org never promotes carbon-conscious living. Never. No offsets, no tree planting, no green teaching. Just literature. They just wait for God. Jehovah's going to fix this in the new system. That's why we got all the bears sitting out in the ocean with all the plastic stuff. So we'll just keep kind of chucking our bottles into the ocean until Jehovah fixes this. That's kind of the message I get. Although Jehovah's Witnesses don't throw garbage out. They are very clean living people. They're not, I don't believe they're part of that problem. Like where they're throwing stuff in the ocean. I would certainly hope not. I've never seen it. But by turning a blind eye to it and making it God's problem, that's not helping either. It's not helping either. We looked at I think we looked at their article. But the JW.org never promotes carbon conscious living. No offsets, no tree planting, no green teaching, just literature. Just wait for God. And you might be saying, well, wait a minute. They did something in Warwick. They had solar panels, ground source heating, EV stations. But that's just mainly for the Bethelites, mainly for the high-end. Maybe high-end visitors might come down and rent a suite for a weekend. I don't know. But it's not like they're going around doing this for the public. And I guarantee you they got 50% grants on everything. I guarantee you, a charity religion, they're getting grants. Here in Canada they are anyways. But meanwhile, Jehovah's Witnesses back at headquarters, they mass print literature. This knocks millions of trees down. We're going to take a look at some numbers. How many trees it would take to keep up to all the printing that they do. They do a lot of printing, even though they drop their magazines to 2 prints a year. There's a lot of printing. There's a lot of books, a lot of Bibles, a lot of paper, a lot of brochures. They leave stuff when they go to door to door. They have stuff to leave. So think of the ink that goes into that. There's a lot of poisonous ink when they run it through the presses. We did a video here about JW.org. This is maybe a decade ago or something. But they were caught burying poisonous chemicals on the farms. You wondered why they had a farm? Well, it was to bury poisonous chemicals. They got caught. Had to all be cleaned up. I don't think they do it today, but that's why you shred all these records. Because if we get caught with a record, it's just a handwritten note. It could cost us thousands, if not millions of dollars. Shred those records. So then when the authorities came to look at the ink, they said, we have no records. We have no record of who put that ink in the ground. They played that one on the government. And then everyone went back and said, hey, wait a minute here. This goes back. So they play dumb. Get rid of the records. But anyways, I don't think they're doing that today. I think they get caught. It's embarrassing. But they're still doing nothing to help the local communities environmentally. So JW.org, they sidestep everything. JW.org just, they post stuff like environmental problems, what God's kingdom will do to save us. That's continually, that's all they do. So rather than look to human efforts to solve these problems, we're convinced that God's kingdom will soon intervene and bring ruin to those ruining the earth. You've heard that on JW.org. So what's the translation? We're not going to fix anything. God will. They're going to wait for God to fix it. So scripturally, is this accurate, folks? Let's take a look at Genesis 2:15. Jehovah God took the man, settled him in the Garden of Eden. To do what? To take care of it. To cultivate it and take care of it. Not to fill the ocean with plastic bottles. Not to turn a blind eye and say we're going to wait till the new system. To take care of it. You know, when 1975 came, a lot of farmers up here in Canada, this one farmer I knew, my best friend at the time, it was his dad. His dad didn't fix the fences in 1975. All his cattle were out. And my friend remembered that. He said, I remember in 1975, I had to chase these cattle all year. I was chasing cattle. They were in the neighbor's place. And Dad just kind of like gave up. 1975 was here. And that's how a lot of them did it. So I don't know how that fits in. Cultivate it and take care of it. Cultivate it, farmers, and fix your fences. Don't worry about the end. This earth is for us to take care of it. That was a command right at the beginning. Psalms 24:1, the earth is Jehovah's and everything in it. Well, if you were Jehovah and you own your house and Jehovah's Witnesses were your tenants and they turned a blind eye and said, well, we're waiting for the carpenter come in. He's going to make everything new. But you're living in his house. You expect your tenants to look after the house they live in and replenish it. We're going to look at why Jehovah, even though they don't throw plastic bottles out the window, we're going to show you what they do. That's actually a way more dangerous, a way more pollution. Ecclesiastes 7:17, why should you destroy yourself before your time? So Jehovah's Witnesses, why would you allow yourselves to be destroyed earlier? Like, get involved. Plant some trees. So JW's ramp up travel, printing, and results in carbon output. Other churches are planting trees, installing solar, and giving back. If we take a look at some of the other churches, like the Catholics, are doing solar and reforestation. The Seventh-day Adventists, they're involved in solar clinics and they have solar schools. And they have real schools all over the earth. The Mormons, they have disaster relief farms and they put $1 billion and just threw it out there to help the poor. And the local churches, well, there's a lot of them around. I knew our little community church in the town I was in Westlock, they were doing solar. And they were helping, sending sea cans with solar. And I actually went down and brought an inverter down, donated it. And that went in a sea can. I don't know where it went, but that's how they did it. And then they'd send people down from their church and they'd put it all in and teach them how to do solar water pumps and solar on their roofs and so forth so they could get internet and learn, right? So what's JW.org doing? They're still handing out pamphlets. And pamphlets take trees down. It's paper products. So let's look at this before we do the final summary. I want to look at a couple thumbnails here. I want to get off the screen. I want to look at this one. So there's the solar chart. We looked at that. That's a breakdown of what's happening. Weekly preaching is taking the most. It's pumping out the most carbon monoxide. Convention travel, that's second. Third, we have a printed literature, paper, and shipping. That's third. Kingdom halls, utilities. Fourth, hotels, food transport, and idling vehicles. So those are all putting a lot into the carbon monoxide. For instance, The assemblies alone, or the weekly preaching travel, that's 1.6 million kilos of carbon monoxide. We're going to look at that on the next screen here. So here's the real cost of J.W. Org's preaching model. The estimated annual carbon monoxide output from JW activities is 2.87 billion kilograms. If we add everything up on the previous screen there, add each of them up, and that's what it comes up with, 2.87 billion kilograms. So you need trees needed to offset this would be 136.5 million mature trees. Each mature tree absorbs 21 kilograms of carbon monoxide per year. Yeah. And estimated environmental costs, the carbon tax equivalents, is 286.8 million USD per year. That's what they, because you're paying, using 100 tons as a global average social cost of carbon. Canada here, we had carbon taxes on everything. Still do, I think. JW Org plants trees? No trees. They run no environmental relief. And they shift this entire cost to the planet. Meanwhile, their literature and their travel system demands more fossil fuels than almost any other religion on this earth. And yes, we've averaged this out across regions with bikes, buses, walking. This includes offset consideration for poorer and more remote lands where cars aren't used. So this is what's happening, folks. It's a big. They're using a lot of carbon. Think of it. A lot of carbon is going out each day, each week. So here's our final summary. Weekly ministry. I'm just going to move screens. Weekly ministry. If we add it all up, right? The weekly ministry, that takes a lot of carbon going into the air. That weekly ministry, huge. No other religion is doing that. No one. And they're proud of it. We're doing God's work. We're ruining the earth. You see, when you don't offset your carbon on the planet, plant trees for all the trees that are knocked down for your literature, and plant trees because of all the carbon you're putting into the atmosphere. You need 130 some million trees planted, Jehovah's Witnesses. They could do it. They're a big organization, 8.7 million people. To plant 130 some million trees is nothing. That's only, a couple bags of trees each family. So, but they're not doing it. We add this all up. They put more carbon into the atmosphere with the weekly ministry. Convention travel, that's second. Hotel stays, flights, idling vehicles, printed literature, thousands of climate-controlled halls all over the world. That takes a lot of carbon. That puts a lot of carbon in the atmosphere. All because J.W. Org wants this. So Jesus never said to make assemblies and to do all these assemblies, 2 assemblies a year. And J.W. Org plays all this old Israelite stuff to say, yeah, they did it back then, but we're not under the Israelite rule. Jesus died. He did away. He said, that's all done. No more being all under these rules. You see, but J.W. Org, J.W., put an E in there. They want to be Jews. They want to follow all of this stuff in the Old Testament, these assemblies, these meetings that they had. But there's a cost to the planet. Back then, they walked. Now, they drive. Carbon goes into the atmosphere, and they're not giving back. So, Jehovah's Witnesses, as a result, may have one of the highest carbon footprints per capita among religions. And they don't even acknowledge it. The irony, they claim to honor the Creator. But the Creator says, I'm going to ruin those ruining the earth. So preaching may be spiritual, but pollution is physical. You can't claim to love the earth when your faith burns this much fuel. Live your life with love and maybe a little less gasoline. We'll see you guys on the next video. Bye for now.